Okay, so next up on the to-do list is to fit a boost gauge so I can see what the factory boost, well, what the car's currently boosting at. I can look up the factory boost levels and compare it to make sure it's running correctly, in terms of boost at least. And then I thought I'd fit a manual boost controller so we can tweak with the boost a little bit and see what happens when we turn it up. Might get a bit more power, because if you push this thing hard, it will sort of, I don't know, it'll pick up nicely, but it's by no means nippy. Now I've got this fantastic 100% carbon fibre. Yeah, probably one of the cheapest, nastiest boost gauges I've ever seen, but it's lying around, so why not use it? I can get a better one if I need to more accurately control boost, well, monitor boost. Also got a vacuum on there as well, so I can monitor how strongly the vacuum's pulling on the engine. This is purely mechanical, so it requires a vac/boost feed line attaching directly to the back of the gauge, and there's just two wires for the illumination, one to be wired to the earth and the second one to be wired to a switched ignition. So I really don't want to butcher the dash or anything to mount this thing, so I think I'm just going to use a bit of Velcro for now. I have left myself conveniently some wires behind this switch panel which are earth and switched ignition, so that's kind of making me think, shall I just shove it there for now? I mean, it's visible, kind of nowhere else to put it, nowhere obvious. And from there I can probably send the vac/boost pipe down that vent hole, or just next to the vent hole. And so I've already posted this through the bulkhead. I did this whilst the dash was all apart. Ironically, I'm now going to have to take off the under dash panel on the driver's side to enable me to hook up the gauge itself, which is fine. It's just minimal work, and obviously I've already routed it in a suitable place under the bonnet, so I think I'm going to start by removing this panel and seeing exactly how much I've got to work with, where I can route it to, and where I can get it to come out of neatly in such a way that it'll reach and not be too visible, even though I really don't think anything's going to spoil the view any more than this exquisite gauge pod. But that is just it's just temporary, so I don't really mind. I'm going to come up with a better solution for that soon. I heard you can get some inserts for these vents which take gauges. You can also print them, and I've got a 3D printer, or access to a 3D printer that I jointly own, so I might try to find the files for that and print some of those, get some of those printed and try to fit one in and see how that goes. I don't think it's possible to get one in that end one, but again, that might be an option as well. I may have to look into that. Alternatively, I could possibly mount it there. I've just got a little phone holder in it, but yeah, I could mount it there. Just put a bit of Velcro on the speaker cover. The wiring can go down behind the speaker cover. The tube can go down somewhere near the speaker cover, or behind, or through the. I don't know. I'm going to have a look and see what I think's best, and get this panel off, which you've seen me take off before, but it's just, this one is T20, I think we said, Torx, there and not there. Is it 2 on this one? Let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, and then it just slides out. See where the yellow is? It's just tucked in on top of there. Just slides out from there and slides around the bonnet catch, and it comes out nicely. So I'll get on with that now, and we'll see what we're looking like then. I'm just under here now to show you how I've done this. So there's a little tube here which feeds through to the bonnet area, the engine bay, goes through the bulkhead in its own sealed grommet, and at the end of it is 4 little nodules that are all sealed off. So for anything I've needed up to now, I've just cut one off and fed the wire through, cut one off, fed the tube through. A bit of a tight fit, but that'll just make for a good seal. You can take this rubber cap off, poke your wire or your tube through the rubber, tape it to the end of a long zip tie, and if that's not long enough, use 2 or 3 with the ends cut off so they're all nice and long and thin. Slide them through. You've got the same, I'll just show you the other side. Got the same thing under the bonnet here, so do the same thing, let it out the other end, and that obviously once you've pulled your zip tie through, you can use that to pull the wire through. It is a bit of a complicated route, so obviously wires aren't stiff enough to push their way through. But if you've got something a bit sturdier like a cable tie, and I'm talking about a thick one, you know, like a strong one. If you've not got anything like that, then maybe a curtain wire, a net curtain wire, or a drain rod or something like that, something flexible but stiff would do the job. You can use that to push whatever it is that you're routing through and then bring it out the other end. So this is our boost pipe. We're going to be, well, it's a reference pipe for the boost gauge. We're going to be teeing that in here with this tube which goes to the compressor bypass valve, which is basically like a blow-off valve, but it sends what's already been metered, if I'm correct in understanding, it sends what's already been metered back round to the low pressure side of the intake, so it'll still go through the engine so that the engine doesn't get a false reading on the air mass intake. So anyway, I'm going to tee this in here because it is directly connected to the plenum or intake manifold, and that is going to be showing us actual boost pressure, what the engine sees, and this just seems to reach nicely to there. I've just got a little bit of dielectric grease on there that I was using to help ease it through the bulkhead tube, so I'll chop that off there, tee that in, and that's this side complete. Then I need to do the other side, so I'm going to have a look at that now. Okay, so I've worked out that the best thing I can do, or one thing I can do, which I have done, is drill a little hole in this plastic vent which leads up to that opening there on top of the dash. Then I can post my boost reference pipe through that gap, and it'll just come from here over to the back underneath the pod and into the back of the boost gauge. It's not perfect, but it'll do for now. The wires I will send down behind this, because they can be crushed enough to hide behind the gap of this. They will drop down into the dash, and I can pick up from the wires that I left myself over there, which you can see coiled up with a little terminal on the end. I can wire them in, no problem. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the tube running up through the gap in the dash. Now I'm just going to pop this cover off. Pop this cover off the tweeter housing. Pull these little rivet clips up. Once they're out, I don't even think you need to get them out, to be honest. I think they just need to, the rivet just needs to be out the centre of them, but let's just pull that out of the way so we don't lose it. And this will lift up, and we just have a hole down there into the dash. I've previously disconnected this anyway, so I can just move out of the way for now. I can put some terminals on the ends of these wires, post them down that hole, and connect the tube, and then we're ready for mounting it. Okay, so we've got tube on the end of the gauge, wires drop down to this area with terminals on. They just need to go over the steering rack, which is not encased. It does move, so I need to make sure that they're not sitting or leaning on the steering rack. I'll zip tie them up out the way to another piece of loom that's further up, and then just need connecting to those wires there, which I just need to identify which one is earth and which one is switched positive. There you go, there's the other one. Did I make it obvious for myself? Yeah, so the one that's not got any protection on will be the earth, the one with the red connector on the end will be the switch positive. I mean, really I should be using different coloured connectors, shielded ones as well for these, but I like to live dangerously, so there you go. But don't try this at home, you'll let the angry pixies out. Okay, that is the wiring complete. I've tucked it up away. Got some Velcro strips on the bottom of the pod. The wire just comes out and goes under the speaker. The tube goes out and goes down the side. And if I turn the ignition on, we get power. So we just need to do the T-piece now. Got a little T-piece hanging about. Shove that in, and we should be good to go. Okay, here we are under the bonnet. I'm just going to snip the end of this tube off with the grease in. Okay. There we are. So that's a clean piece of pipe. I'm going to push this over the T section. Helps if you heat this tube, but it can also make it more difficult because it goes very flimsy when you heat it. But I find that a little bit of perseverance also does the trick. Just be careful if you're working with really flimsy pieces of plastic like this T-piece that you don't accidentally snap it. Right, that's attached, so now we need to cut the pipe that we're taking the reference from. So that's that. We can slide the T-piece into either side of that to complete the circuit. And there we have it. We're all teed in. Now that hasn't got enough slack on it to touch anything it's not meant to touch, so I'm not going to bother restraining it any further. It's held on there and it's zip tied to the limb there. So we should be good to go now. That should be a working boost gauge. Let's check it. Okay, so ignition on. We've got 0 pressure at the boost gauge, which is correct. Now if we start the engine we should see vacuum. Yeah, we're getting vacuum. So that's inches. Why is it measuring the vacuum in a different... I wonder why it measures the vacuum in a different way to the boost. Anyway, let's see if we can get some spool up going on. Obviously there's no load on the engine at the moment, so it shouldn't produce any boost as such, but it may just bring us close to 0 or very slightly over. Oh yeah, it did. It did. Oh, it's not very happy. What's going on there? I think we've got a bit of a misfire there. Let's investigate that. I found what it was. It was this injector plug. I took the injector plugs off and WD-40'd them earlier just to make sure they were getting a good connection and there was no issues there, so that's what was causing the misfire. So we're alright now. Some nice intake sounds from our high quality top end air filter there. Right, so that is the boost gauge fitted. Now that it's fitted, I think it's time to go for a spin. So we sorted the issue with the misfire. We are running quite happily. Belts do have a bit of a squeak when they're cold, but then they do quieten up, which is fine, because they're not new belts. They probably need changing, to be fair, but for now we'll just keep them tensioned and see how much we can squeeze out of them. So as we go for a drive now, we can see exactly what this factory turbo setup is set to boost to. It doesn't necessarily tell us what it's set to boost to. We may find that we don't get the boost that the car should have, and then we can diagnose any issues before we start messing with the boost. We are live on the UK roads, so obviously you're on a mounted platform at the moment. I'm not holding my phone, keeping within the law. Seatbelt on, speed limit adhered, no music because, well, YouTube, copyright, that kind of thing. But that's fine, this is all for science. So, the question is, how much boost should the vehicle be running? I've seen two different sources of information give me two different results there. One of them being that it should be running 4 psi, and one of them telling me it should be running 6 psi. So I don't know which one's right, but we'll see what we run and refer back to. I didn't really have a very good look, to be honest. I just had a quick Google. There's probably some more reliable information out there to go off, but for now I'm going to expect 4 to 6 psi, and if I get that, I'm going to assume that it's working correctly. But correctly isn't good enough. We want more power. Okay, so each mark on the boost gauge denotes 2 psi. So I'm seeing just under 4 there. I might just say that is 4,